Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful individuals. It's another epi of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, fine feathered individuals, as we now have all the major regions full steam ahead. LCK kicking off rounds 3/4, and let me tell you, initial signs are it's a good thing T1 is carrying over a 14-4 record, because things obviously not starting as planned in the telecom war. They get 2-0'd by KT, and you might go, wow, they must have gotten completely stomped. And then you go through and you say, well, this maybe should have been a 2-0 for T1, but a pair, more than a pair, probably four, kind of egregious, not a T1 circus, but just complete throwing away the game.
Yeah, this is absolutely one of those series where, in hindsight, examining it, a T1 that is performing or functioning at its average, again, which the T1 average is already exceptional. If they're performing at that level, they finish out this series 2-0. You find a way to close out these games or even at that point, rescue these games after the mistakes and find a way to finish it out. That's not the story here, and I think part of that is due to some misplays, struggles, mistakes that compound on each other for T1 in these situations. But you got to give credit to KT. That has to be part of this equation that you are looking at here, and this is a KT that had to make a quote-unquote emergency substitution in the bottom lane. Fenrir stepping on in, no scrims with him whatsoever, and hitting the pavement and getting some results on Summoner's Rift.
Yeah, I mean, that is obviously an insane scenario. Sounds like there was a little bit of a clash with aiming and certain teammates who won't be named, but if he's clashing with BDD, he ain't starting another game. So yeah, Fenrir getting thrown in to the Wolves, applicable for his name. He has some mispositioning, miscues on the Ezreal, but then kind of bounces back to have solid team fights in both the MF and the second half of the Ezreal game. But again, these gold leads T1 has, and then it's just owner getting caught out. Faker trying to save a play, getting caught out. And it's just uncharacteristic. The circus, has become a meme. Crazy extended team fights, sloppy play out of T1, sure. This didn't really feel like that. This just felt like you threw a 4K gold lead, and what used to be the strengths of T1, and that's movements around the map, avoiding fights if the comp doesn't call for it, knowing what their win conditions are, they've all gone to the wayside.
It felt like they were behind the 8-ball. A lot of these situations in the match where, again, despite being able to generate these leads, some positive early game stuff, you get to these moments where, again, as you lay out, owner getting caught out, these little things where you're just behind the play, behind the strategy just enough that you're getting caught out in these situations, and that is adding up, and that is paying the price and adding towards the ammunition that KT was able to have within these games later on and able to execute on out throughout that point. And I think that this is one of those ones where, again, I will reiterate, this is about the power of KT. This is about BDD. This is about having them finally functioning as a better unit altogether without aiming, which I think is a separate discussion that you can have about, yes, aiming does provide you some explosiveness that can match up to the top tier of the LCK, but there's a lot in between that does bring you back down towards that average, that lower level of the LCK. This is a KT where we saw today them firing and powering up towards that top tier of this region.
Yeah, I mean, the Yone was absolutely crisp out of BDD, and really that whole Wombo combo comp with the Jarvan Rumble and Misfortune. Once they did find that combo, absolutely unleashed it. So yes, credit where credit is due for KT. And again, the 14-4 combined record from round 1 and 2 makes me consider even more. I'm resting some T1 guys throughout this regular season. If that's okay, Kyria, you take a week or two off here. Faker, take a week or two off here, just to, number one, I feel like that can kind of revitalize the guys to then fully be united with 5 later on, and just give them a break. Sometimes you need to be on the outside looking in. I know Doran has said other teams have played more games than them so far this year, which is true, but this whirlwind of a schedule, like, why are the T1 starters playing in Kespa Cup? Why aren't they subbing in some Challenger fellas?
They got to be really hard up for maybe the Kespa tournament prize money or viewers, whatever
Could be in the
situation.
contract. You got to start your starters.
Could be something like that. But it's one of these situations where I think, again, very clearly, this is not like looking at the LCS or the LEC where you're going, oh man, you've played like half the games of the LPL or the LCK. It's not that much of a thing, but it absolutely is one when you add in on top of it T1 sponsor obligations, which has been kind of a hot topic in the last week or two, discussing about that and the burnout that can come through that and how that pulls you away from strategy, from preparation, time, and focus for an actual match and things like that. If you're going to have those sponsor obligations running throughout all this way, and where it seems that, again, like almost every year, runs all the way up until that preparation for the World Championship, and then it's all focus on that, and that's when we seem to see the best out of T1. Yeah, I think it clearly is one of these indications, and you are given the benefit of having that 14-4 record. You're given the benefit of the LCK getting that 4th spot again for Worlds, that you can take that liberty, take that chance in this situation of resting some guys, and I think that would be a valuable thing to discuss if you are T1.
And listen, especially with squads like Genji and Hanwha, are you really sweating finishing top 2 if you're T1? If you're in that 3, 4, 5 zone heading towards the summer playoffs, I think you're perfectly happy in any of those positions. And this is week 1, game 1. Don't be falling away all of a sudden saying, I don't know about T1 as that 4th seed at Worlds, whatever. It's so early. I'm not falling for this playing possum maneuver that T1 has done for like 3 years in a row at this point.
I will caution that compared to those other years where T1 is so free to enter in as that lower seeded ranking from the LCK and really still terrorize on the international stage, the international stage is different, and who you will be going up against and the situations and everything that you can find yourself in with Fearless Draft and the metas that exist, that I think that is even more risk than it ever has been, even for a team and organization that has proven themselves through that position so many times in T1. I'm gonna slowly caution it this year around, thinking that things are gonna be different on the international stage. But again, I want to reiterate to the T1 fans, don't be looking for any trucks for rental. We don't need more trucks in front of the HQ right now. This is one of these ones where I think everyone just needs to take that step back and then reevaluate and step forward.
The only truck to be putting out front is an ice cream truck for the boys to chill, decompress, take a deep breath, and refocus later on in the split. One of those international squads, hopefully, that are starting to level up, find that form we've been calling for anyone's legend to look like they did in 2025 at this point, and have not gotten it throughout this year, but we saw signs of it at the end of spring and now here in summer. I think they have, after putting Top Esports in the dumpster for their first loss of the split, firmly cemented themselves as that second best team in the LPL. And I'm not sure there's anyone in any region that puts more nutty score lines up in wins than Tarzan, because this dude was 12, 1, and 25 for a 37 KDA as he absolutely made Tien look like a challenger level jungler.
He might be the most feast or famine player in the history of League of Legends, because it is only the most glorious of feasts for your squads, or everyone is going starving if Tarzan ain't even picking up anything. It's the way it goes, but it went good for anyone's legend here in this one, and that was absolutely the story that you wanted to see in the LPL coming into this summer split, is to see them put themselves in that top tier conversation, because it's felt weird not having anyone's legend at these international events for the last little bit, despite knowing that talent is there, and that it's merely, I think it was a lot of it was kind of just how do you continue, how do you live life after moving away from the head coaching situation with Tabe and everything else. And so how do you rebound? And it's taken some time, and we have seen little twinklings of that talent and that skill there for this squad. I think now we're going to see it in summer and in a much more consistent and full force against the rest of the LPL.
And we're seeing Breathe fit in nicely here in his first split with the squad. I know there's been so much talk about how important Flandre was, and the intangibles that he brings to a team, which are legitimate for sure, but Breathe individually and carry potential, I think nobody's going to argue is an upgrade in that regard. And even, I think none of these AD carries, we've seen them all kind of complaining about the meta, and understandably so. I feel like nobody is happier than Hope and just is ready to, yeah, sure, throw me on these AP carries. I'm just here to vibe in the bot lane, and he's vibing a little better on these AP carry picks.
It's not the same as when we talk about Viper and him rolling on through it and the proficiency on that, but I think the freedom and willingness is very clear there from Hope, and how he has been playing these champions and how he utilizes them for the team in these compositions. I think is an aspect that you can look at as a positive one for this Anyone's Legend. And again, this is a significant result. Say what you will about top esports in the international scene, but back in the LPL, they have been one of these top tier teams, one of the gatekeepers of being at that elite status, and to take them down here early in this type of fashion for Anyone's Legend helps me feed into the hype for this squad.
Yeah, and again, Tien and Cream both had duds of a series on the day, but we'll give more credit to AL for making them, forcing them into having those dud performances. We had some pushback against BLG in the other LPL series coming from LGD, of all places, actually taking a game off of them. And of course, we have to update what kind of bot lane matchups we're getting. I have not seen the Locke versus Vladimir awesome dude carry matchup yet.
And I don't want to see it again, is the thing that I will put forth here. I think this is one of those ones where, again, people are taking that freedom, that limit testing of where you can put these champions, and especially within the meta of that bottom lane. I don't like it. I think this is one of those ones clearly where you are limiting a champion like Locke in what he's able to do and how he's able to accelerate and the facets that he can impact on an enemy team when you are putting him down into that matchup in the bottom lane, and even 1v1 against Vlad, which are, again, how long has it been since we've seen Vlad really in professional play? Never mind, how long has it been since we've seen Vlad in professional play where he's in a solo lane? Or even except the jungle for that matter. He seems to be a bot laner now, and only when we expand into the awesome dude carry meta.
Yeah, and you alluded to it. It's totally different between Hope and Viper, even though both are maybe thriving in this meta. Hope is like, I'm here for the passenger princess, I'm throwing bombs as Ziggs. Viper is like, I'm 1v4 diving on the Vladimir to engage and get this thing started and actually be that awesome dude carry.
Hope still feels like an ADC playing this champion, right? Whereas Viper feels like you're like, what, you got a third solo laner on your team? How did this happen when he's playing these type of champions? That's the type of difference that you get there, but it's still one of these ones where having that angle, having that little bit to yourself as Hope compared to most or every other ADC is that benefit for Anyone's Legend, and I think that's one of these ones that you can carry with you right now.
It's almost like you go, wow, is Viper actually the best mid laner on his team? And then you remember who his mid laner is. You see his mid laner play an Akali in Game 3 and make it look like he's in solo queue. How many times has Knight absolutely styled on people on Akali? It's like, this should be permabanned against them.
Well, the problem is you only have a couple bans per game, and a guy like Knight is giving you multiple examples of things that you would throw into that one, and I think we can wager that looking back on this one, they would probably throw the Akali into that category.
It's better to just throw your bot laner on Akali and struggle on that pick than let Knight play it.
Yeah, because the 1v4 that he goes on in this one to make it again, and really, as you mentioned, one where BLG has already dropped a game in this series. They've already been tested by LGD. And for him to bust that one out, say, no, not the upset today. We're turning this one back around. It's a BLG win. Really is to showcase just the type of superstar status that Knight can pull into a game.
Yeah, it's another double MVP performance for him as BLG maintain that perfect record. But again, there was a little bit of pushback from LGD, and I think this team is still, tough sledding, being in this upper difficult group in the LPL, but are holding their own here early despite, starting 1-3.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very difficult task. Nobody was convinced that it wasn't going to be that anyway, but that's just, again, one of the realities that you come through when this is the type of formatting, type of scheduling that you do put forth in these regions.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still wide open. Maybe AL is, slid into that 2 spot, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the LPL are still very much open for the taking. Trying a little bit of very early power rankings. We're not doing global action yet, but going to try some combined Western power rankings to give us an opportunity to talk about these squads that, are never, ever, ever going to sniff into the top 20 of those global rankings. But very, very early, of course, only a single best of for these LCS squads, and only 4 LEC teams have actually played so far. So very kind of janky, but the combined West looking like a pretty easy. Again, we're kind of resetting for summer. That's why KC and G2 are in that top spot, even though EU got beat around by the LCS internationally. This is also currently Lion Gaming without Inspired. So, a few caveats there.
Yeah, and again, still, we like to bicker, to fight with one another. Of course, the rivalry between the two, but I like to call it, like brothers, right? You'll fight with each other, but hey, someone picks a fight with your brother, you got their back. That's your guy type of situation. That's how I feel about the West in this situation in League of Legends. So we're all friends here, even though we would like to battle it out with one another. And when you do look at that, I think you can see that in the very top of this rankings, where you see, of course, EU getting that representation up here in that situation. And despite Lions' results at MSI and everything else, and maybe maybe just a little bit taken back from the EWC. I don't put too much stock into anything like that, but it is part of that global equation that you are figuring out for all these teams, and that's, I think, why you can find Alliance slotting into this spot despite the MSI results.
Yeah, and I think, again, Inspired not being there kind of slows things down in terms of the progression, but Team Liquid has continued that MSI momentum. Again, only one matchup, but against Cloud9, who, this new look squad, let's see how they match up, and they were clearly not ready for the test that Team Liquid threw on their desk.
Yeah, which is that. Let's talk about that one a little bit later, because that's the not so fun part to talk about. Let's talk about Team Liquid, where it is fun to focus in on them continuing to look more so like the Team Liquid you envisioned heading into this year, the Team Liquid that you dreamed of when you found out that they were adding Quid to this team and what that could mean for how they could operate. This is what you are seeing right now, and it doesn't really matter to me the level that Cloud9 was at, because I think that was substandard or sub-expectation or what you would want in these situations. Team Liquid delivered all that you needed to and that you wanted to see from them in that series, and have continued all that positivity coming through, the way that they were able to handle, I think, again, outside of T1, which that's a separate task to take down. They handled themselves pretty well on the international stage, and so to see this Team Liquid is exactly the Team Liquid that we were hoping to see all along.
And hopefully it stays that way. They continue to push Lion and level up the LCS region as a whole. The couple EU squads that didn't have as much fun as KC and G2 over the weekend. Obviously, Vitality and Koi. Vitality got that head-to-head, so yes, they're going to be higher than Koi. And messy stuff out of Koi. Again, they had leads against both G2 and KC, but just kind of similar to T1 earlier today, just guys getting caught out and completely throwing leads away.
And I think this is kind of the limit of where you can, at least right now, start to make some type of copium type of angles about these teams finding a way to climb up, to challenge the teams ahead of them type of situation. I think you can talk about some more time with the group for Fiesta to maybe settle things out, find the right strategies and timings of certain things that they want to be doing as a group and executing on it. Movistar Koi, it seems to be just that these issues, the reality of this team is that this is the limit. Being a third, being a fourth tier team, behind a Carmine Corp, behind a G2, this seems to be the reality of where you are, despite all the positive aspects. And that's one of those ones where I think right now it's just coming to terms with who you are. I don't think that's going to change at this point, where there are other teams where there is going to be growth, there is going to be development. Unfortunately, I'm stuck now at the point with Movistar Core where I feel like this is the roadblock. This is as far as you go.
And, for a squad, G2 has Perks as the head coach. Fiesta comes in for Vitality. This is a Koi squad that's the exact same lineup, has been all year, similar to KC, but it's still the same issues. And I am worried that we have already seen the ceiling that this MCOY team is going to be able to reach. We haven't seen the ceiling, I sure hope not, for these other 4 LCS squads that are on here. Shopify had a nice debut. They looked pretty dominant. Zynie looked a lot more comfortable, but Sentinels struggled in a 3-game set. And then, of course, Cloud9 and FlyQuest were definitely disappointing on the weekend, because these are squads that had, actual expectations.
Yeah, and especially more so, I think Cloud9 with bigger expectations. FlyQuest, you can kind of get under the excuse or radar of going, you know what? Maybe this just is, the reality of having a young, inexperienced roster, that you're going to have these fluctuations, that you might have, expectations and then get completely disappointed the next week around and have to refigure things out. That's fine for FlyQuest. That's not fine for Cloud9 and the roster that they were putting through, and the aspirations and goals that they had set forth for this year. Never mind this split, having to then, kind of panic, resettle yourself given the disappointments of the previous 2 splits. This was absolutely as nightmare as it could be, I think, for Cloud9, and it's only, unfortunately, looking like it's going to continue.
And listen, we give them a little bit more of a path. New coaching staff with I Will Dominate and Yamato, 7-man roster. What exactly is that going to look like? We're going to give them a lot more than a single week to judge. And really, for this Cloud9, I think we've learned, and it's been proven, a dominant regular season is not the recipe for success. So maybe it's better for them to struggle throughout and have to work out their things earlier on than in playoffs.
They're going to have some of that cushion, I guess, but it's still going to be one of those ones where you will be criticized. You will be examined every performance, every week, under the expectation of being one of these top teams within the LCS, and you have been anything but that.
It'd be nice to see one of these bottom half LCS squads level up to at least push, and, put some competition for that top 2. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you, Stunners. Thanks for hanging out as always. We'll catch you on that flippity flip.